Samantha was rushing through the crowded mall, Christmas lists in hand, when a little boy collapsed in tears by the food court. Samantha was weaving through the mall, her arms full of shopping bags and her mind racing through to-do lists. It was 2 weeks before Christmas, and the air buzzed with hurried footsteps, carols, and the scent of cinnamon pretzels. She had no time to spare, until she saw him. A little boy, maybe 5 years old, sat curled up on the cold tile near the food court, his small body shaking with sobs. People passed without a glance. Something in Samantha's chest tugged. She stopped. Kneeling down, she asked softly, "Are you lost, sweetheart?" He didn't answer, just looked up with tear-soaked eyes and reached out. Without thinking, Samantha opened her arms. The boy wrapped himself around her like she was his entire world. They sat like that for 10 minutes. She told him stories about snowmen and asked his name, but he stayed quiet. Eventually, mall security arrived and took over gently, thanking her for staying with him. Samantha went home, still thinking about the boy. Hours later, her doorbell rang. 2 uniformed officers stood there. Panic flickered in her chest. "Is something wrong?" One of them smiled. "You're not in trouble." Quite the opposite. They explained the child had been reported missing 2 days ago. His photo had been circulating across the state. He hadn't spoken to anyone, until now. When we asked him who helped him, the officer said, he just kept repeating, "the nice lady with the warm hug." Tears welled in Samantha's eyes. They didn't need her for questioning. They just wanted to say thank you. Her small act had ended a nightmare. The boy was safe. Back with his mother. All because she stopped. That night, as Christmas lights glowed outside her window, Samantha realized something. We're all rushing through life, but sometimes, a moment of compassion is all it takes to change the course of someone else's story. And sometimes, that moment becomes the missing piece that makes everything whole. Lena was having one of those days, the kind where the weight of everything sits heavy on your chest. She had just been let go from her job that morning, rent was due, and she didn't even know why she was at the mall, maybe just to feel a little less alone. As she wandered past the escalators, something stopped her. A sound. Soft, muffled crying. She turned and saw a little boy, no older than 6, sitting on the bench with his face buried in his arms. People walked by, eyes glued to phones, rushing past like he wasn't even there. But Lena saw him. She approached slowly, crouched down, and said gently, "Hey, are you okay?" No answer. Just trembling shoulders and quiet sobs. She sat beside him. "You don't have to talk," she whispered. "I'm just gonna sit here with you." A few seconds passed. Then, instinctively, she opened her arms. The boy didn't hesitate. He leaned into her like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. They sat there in silence, her arms wrapped around his small frame. A security guard eventually noticed and called for help. Paramedics and police arrived soon after. Lena stepped back, unsure if she'd done something wrong. But hours later, 2 officers found her in the food court and sat down across from her. "The boy you hugged, he's a foster child. Nonverbal. He ran away from his group home this morning." Lena's breath caught. "After your hug," the officer continued, "he whispered his name for the first time in weeks." Tears filled Lena's eyes. Her hug hadn't just comforted a scared child, it unlocked something deep within him. Later, a social worker told her, "Some children don't need words. They need to be seen. And you saw him." That night, Lena didn't feel quite so broken. Because even in her worst moment, her heart still had space for someone else's pain. And in giving love she didn't even know she had left, she helped heal a child who had nearly forgotten what love felt like. Maria was only at the mall to return a sweater. She hated the noise, the crowds, but she told herself she'd be in and out. Until she saw her. A little girl, maybe 4, sitting beneath the giant mall directory, her tiny hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. Maria glanced around. No parent. No staff. Just people passing by, earbuds in, eyes forward. She hesitated. Then walked over, knelt down, and asked gently, "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl didn't answer. She just cried harder. Maria didn't press. Instead, she sat beside her on the floor, close but not too close. After a moment, she reached out her hand. The girl peeked through her fingers. Then, without a word, crawled into Maria's lap and buried her face in her coat. Maria held her. No questions. No panic. Just quiet comfort in the middle of the mall's chaos. Security arrived soon after. A clerk had seen them and alerted someone. Maria stood, still holding the girl, and gently passed her into the arms of a female guard. She left her name, but not much else. Then walked out of the mall and tried to shake off the heaviness in her heart. Hours later, her phone rang. It was the police. The girl had been abandoned, left deliberately by a relative who couldn't care for her. Cameras showed the moment it happened, and the heart-wrenching footage of her crying alone for nearly 30 minutes, until Maria sat beside her. "She hasn't let anyone touch her since," the officer said. "Except you. She calmed in your arms like she knew you." Maria's voice broke. "I just couldn't walk by. And that's the thing. She didn't have to be a social worker. Or a mother. Or a hero. She just had to be human." That single act of tenderness became the child's first moment of safety in a world that had failed her. And in a season of rushing and forgetting, Maria reminded us all, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do, is stop, kneel, and show someone they're not invisible. Grace didn't even want to be at the mall that day. She hated the noise, the crowds, the pressure to spend money she didn't really have. But her niece's birthday was coming up, and she'd promised to find her something special. She was passing the central fountain when she noticed him. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, sitting alone on the edge of the fountain, knees tucked into his chest, quietly crying. Not the kind of loud cry that draws attention, this was quieter. Sadder. Like he'd run out of tears but still couldn't stop. Dozens of people passed. Not one slowed down. But Grace did. She approached gently. "Hey there, are you okay?" He flinched and shook his head without looking up. Grace sat beside him. "You don't have to talk. I'll just stay here with you, if that's all right." A long silence. Then, slowly, he leaned toward her. Grace opened her arms, and the boy melted into her chest like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to care. Security noticed and called authorities. When the police arrived, they were cautious at first. Grace stepped back, heart pounding, unsure what she had gotten involved in. But later that evening, the officers found her at the coffee shop inside the mall. "We wanted to thank you," one said. "The boy ran away from an abusive foster home. He's been silent for months. But after your hug, he finally spoke. He told us his name." Grace couldn't hold back the tears. She wasn't a therapist. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who stopped and offered a hug. But that hug, that simple, human gesture, had given a lost, frightened boy the courage to speak, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in the world wanted to hurt him. That night, Grace realized something: we never truly know what someone is going through. But sometimes, one moment of compassion can change an entire life. And that moment? It costs nothing. But means everything.